Good afternoon. And do you know that there's a number of people who are really trying to do something about wresting local control back in their own communities? And they've got help from various elected officials and government leaders. That's the subject of next week's town hall meeting that we're sponsoring, and with a bunch of other newspapers, by the way. And this week, we have some special guests who are going to be giving us the background on those stories here on this week's version of the State of Greater Western New York Report, which is brought to you by... Each week, our community makes history. Each week, you make history. And each week, there's only one source to turn to for the first take on history. You know what that is? Subscribe to the Sentinel right now to discover the history being made in your own backyard. The Mendon Honeoye Falls Lima Sentinel. More than just your news, it's your history. Welcome, everyone, to this edition of the State of Greater Western New York Report. Join us each episode as we discuss fantastic topics ranging from history to science to the strange and the wonderful, as well as the treasured spirit with which our region has infused America. We challenge you to consider all things Greater Western New York, from our region's very beginnings to how it inspires, how it empowers, and why it is so admired. Here's the host of the State of Greater Western New York Report, Chris Carosa. Hi there, and welcome everyone again. And by the way, we have some special guests today. There are two media personalities. Hi guys, I bet you never got called that before. They're going to tell us a little bit about some stories they covered in advance of the town hall meeting, which is next week. So you can learn a little bit about the background of some of the speakers, what their issues are, and how they addressed them. But this is from a reporter's standpoint. So let's start with introducing our two guests today. The first one is from the East Aurora Advertiser. It's Shelly Ferullo. Shelly, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got in the business and how you like doing it.
I started freelancing with a newspaper called the Alden Advertiser in 2012. And in 2015, I started working on staff at the East Aurora Advertiser. And I cover three beats. I cover the town of Marilla, the town of Wales, and the East Aurora School District.
Faster than I expected. So, Ben, go ahead. So this is Ben Beagle. He's with the Livingston County News. Ben, tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got started, and what you think about things.
Yes, well, I'm the editor of the Livingston County News, which is a weekly newspaper based in Geneseo. I'm also the regional editor at the Daily News in Batavia. Together, with the two papers, we function as one newsroom, but we have a couple of reporters based in Geneseo, and we cover Genesee, Livingston, Orleans, and Wyoming counties. For myself, I've been out in this region since '94, when I started as a general assignment reporter at the Daily News. And the community journalism aspect of what we do eventually grabbed hold of me and never left. And so the thought of continuing going to bigger and bigger papers, that dream changed, and I got to see what could really happen when you worked in a community and were dedicated to reporting on that community. You got to really see the impact of your stories and how they not only affected people, but how they really affected change within your community. And this fall, I will have been working in this profession professionally for 30 years.
30 years. Congratulations.
Yeah, I'm an old timer.
Yeah. Well, speaking of chronology, we're going to address these topics in chronological order. So we're going to start with Shelley, whose story really appeared first, and it really involved the town of Marilla and some of the other towns in and around Erie County. Shelley, tell us a little bit about that, maybe how it started and what actually happened.
Well, the town of Marilla, since Erie County reissued the mask mandate in November, prior to Thanksgiving, and it was actually even before we knew anything about Omicron, they have issued 3 resolutions to try to take some control back, because they feel that the county and New York State have been making too many decisions that could be made at the local level. So the first resolution was about standing up against the mask mandates and any future vaccine mandates that may come down the line. They had another resolution about some of the stipulations that were put on antiviral medication when it comes to COVID, because there are some general guidelines saying that it should be given to have preference to non-white people, and they feel like that is discriminatory against Caucasians. And there was another resolution passed late December about having the Erie County Controller audit the health commissioner for Erie County because they feel like she has accrued too much overtime during the pandemic.
Now, that, while it started in the town of Marilla, other towns soon sort of took the baton. What can you tell us about that?
So the town of Wales also issued a resolution because they feel like home rule is slipping away. And we have elected officials at the county level and at the state level, but they feel like they no longer have as much of a voice because the governor and the Erie County executive have declared, they've been declaring the executive powers. So it's taking away the voice of everybody else.
So that's really kind of the impetus behind this. It's the higher level elected officials kind of superseding what the local elected officials to do. It's not just elected officials too. And Ben, your story really involves, or it did culminate with elected officials in Livingston County, but it really started within the school district. So give us kind of like the chronology of what happened there.
Yes, well, here it really shows the connectivity of the community because it began with the superintendents of the Livingston County public school districts. There were 9 school superintendents who drafted a letter dated February 2nd that was sent to Governor Hochul's office. And in that letter, they were seeking more guidance regarding COVID-19 mitigation measures. In particular, exit strategies, what kind of timeline for implementing changes would there be? They were frustrated because often these changes in policy would come down on a Friday and they would expect to be implemented on Monday. So they were seeking more guidance on that, but also stressing the importance of restoring local control to let the school districts make their own decisions. And they noted a very strong partnership with the Livingston County Department of Health that had been ongoing and developing from the beginning of the pandemic. Then from the school districts, the County Board of Supervisors put their support behind the school district's request with a resolution that was first considered February 7th at the County Ways and Means Committee meeting, and then later adopted by the Board of Supervisors on February 9th, in which they supported the return of governing power to the Livingston County school districts in relation to COVID-19 safety protocols. The resolution was adopted unanimously among the supervisors who were present. There were 15 of the 17 supervisors there. 2 of them were absent from that meeting. But it shows that connection that the school district was pushing for one outcome, and they had the support from the elected officials from Livingston County, who, in addition to sending the resolution to the governor's office, they sent it to the Department of Health, they sent it to their local representatives in Albany as well.
So I should add that while this here, I'm going to put this up on the screen so that people could see it. There are 3 speakers at next week's town hall meeting. Skip Gingeritz, he's the town supervisor of Marilla, and he was really involved a lot in what Shelley was talking about. And then there's Matt Cole he's the superintendent of Livonia Central Schools. He kind of really spearheaded this letter idea, along with the other superintendents. and got it moving forward. There's a third person, John Ritchie, from the town of Yates, and it's not in Yates County, by the way. It's in Orleans County. And his story really predates these stories by several years, and that had to do with fighting New York State's attempt to establish eminent domain in various towns and counties to put up very large wind turbines. And about a half dozen towns from several different counties, Niagara, Orleans, maybe even Monroe, if I remember correctly, as well as a couple of counties, Orleans and Niagara, passed this sort of home rule resolution that, in the end, prevented these wind turbines from being built. So it's not just the impetus is not just the COVID situation or what happened earlier there. There have been other instances in the past where primarily the state is trying to force local communities to do what the state wants, not what the communities wants. And there's a mechanism for the towns, villages, school districts, counties, cities, whatever, to fight that. And that's really what we're going to be talking about at next week's town hall meeting. If you want to attend, by the way, you could. It's free and open to the public. And here, let me pull this up on the screen here so you can see it. Here's what you would get to sign up. You just go to this. You'll end up with this website here, or this page. Just go to the. There we go. Now let's put them both up so that you can actually see them both. There we go. So if you want to attend, then just go to greaterwesternnewyork.org. You'll get something that looks like this, and you can just sign your name, and you'll be put on the list, and you can attend. And by the way, you'll be able to participate in this event too. The first half will be the speakers. The second half will be a panel where you can ask the speakers questions, and then finally you will be able just to talk amongst yourselves and figure out how you can do things from your end. So before we go to break, let's go back to this story about, from both of your standpoints. We'll start with Shelley. Was this something that came up out of the blue, or were you not surprised to see, in the case of the town of Marilla, them passing these series of resolutions?
With Marilla, I was not surprised. They had pushed back against the county and the state almost from the beginning of the COVID pandemic, when former Governor Cuomo had issued the guideline that you couldn't gather with groups of more than 50. The town of Marilla was the only community in Erie County that still held a fireworks celebration, and this was in 2020. And the Erie County Health Department did come, and they checked out the area, and they left, and they had fireworks, and the next day they did it again with several hundred people.
So on your side, Ben, do you think that this was a surprise from your standpoint that the superintendents did this, or was this something that was building up over time?
No, from the beginning of the pandemic, the superintendents in Livingston County have generally worked together on how best to handle the COVID situation. They've been they meet regularly. They have regular contact with the Department of Health, and even beyond Livingston County. The Livingston County schools are part of Genesee Valley BOCES, which serves 32 public school districts across multiple counties. And they had been very coordinated and out in front of the COVID situation as changes would come down. They worked in a coordinated effort, and you would see that when a change would come down, you would see a lot of similarities and consistency in how the schools would respond and put out information publicly. That very first weekend that things started shutting down with in March of 2020, with the counties put out declared states of emergencies first, and then within hours or the next morning, we were getting the response from the school districts on how they were going to be proceeding for the next couple of weeks. And that generally continued through the pandemic, or has continued through the pandemic.
Well, that's interesting. I'm looking to see, there were a couple of questions here that we can't get to right now. If you do have a question and you'd like me to ask one of the guests here, just plop it in the chat room and I'll relay it over. Right now, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about what happened after this, after they did this. Again, you're watching the State of Greater Western New York report, and we'll be right back after these messages. Through the mists of time, nature and man have both created and buried treasures beyond the imagination. With the ages, these riches slowly dissolve into mere myths until they are forever forgotten. But there are those brave souls who tirelessly cling to the truth, ever seeking to discover the undiscovered, to reveal what has always been there, to uncover the hidden gems of a land thought forsaken but loved by millions. 50 Hidden Gems of Greater Western New York. Discover the secrets in your own backyard. Buy your copy now at 50hiddengems.com. Welcome back to the State of Greater Western New York report. I'm Chris Grosso. With me today is Shelly Ferullo. She's a staff reporter at the East Aurora Advertiser, and Ben Beagle. He's the editor of the Livingston County News. And we're talking about a couple stories that they each covered within their own communities that deal with what I'll call home rule. Technically, it goes by many different names, but it just means the local community trying to retain or capture the ability to make their own decisions for themselves. So let's talk, Shelley, let's go back to you for a second and talk about some of the repercussions that came out of these resolutions that not just the town of Marilla, but several other towns passed within Erie County. Tell us what you know about that.
Well, there are currently a few communities who are actually looking to explore leaving Erie County and joining neighboring counties. The town of Marilla and the town of Wales are interested in joining Wyoming County. And the town of Holland has also expressed some interest in possibly joining Wyoming County. On social media, residents in the town of Alden have expressed interest in perhaps even looking at exploring joining Genesee County, although I don't know if the government is acting on that. And the town of Grand Island has looked into joining Niagara County.
So we have a number of towns who are maybe looking to go to counties that they feel may be more favorable. What about the actual, how did Erie County respond, not necessarily to that, but to the resolutions that some of the towns and villages might have passed, basically saying they weren't going to abide by this mask mandate that Erie County did? Remember, the Erie County mask mandate was issued prior, about a month before the state mandate. So how did Erie County respond to that?
In my coverage area, I feel like the county has largely ignored some of these smaller communities when they have come out with resolutions such as this. There's a lot of documented evidence of meetings that are on social media of the town of Marilla not even enforcing the mask mandates for public officials or for members of the community when they attend the meetings, and they have not received any fines or a slap on the wrist or anything. But meanwhile, larger communities within the county, when they have held meetings and they have not enforced the mask mandate, they actually have been fined.
So that's interesting of itself. Let's turn it over to Ben here. Ben, we actually had a question from somebody in the audience who wanted to know, from an editor standpoint, how do you how do you put together the story? So you have reporters out there who are actually doing the interviews. From an editor, how do you compile it and decide what goes in the paper and what gets left out?
Well, what we did with this was we had gotten a copy of the letter, and the schools have been cooperative, because they wanted this to get out too, so that their residents knew what they were doing. And from the letter, we then reached out to the superintendents who had signed the letter, and we're able to talk to quite a few of them. And in talking to them, each of the reporters would ask questions along the lines of, why they felt the need to draft this letter and send it, and what they hoped to come from it. And, one of the very specific questions involved, do you expect to actually get a response from the governor or the governor's office? And most of the superintendents acknowledged that a direct response was probably not likely, even with the support from the county. But they hoped that through the actions that the governor chose to take, that those would speak for the response that they hoped to get. And roughly a month after they had sent that letter, we had the announcement on Sunday that the masking in K through 12 schools would become optional. And so this week, reporters, we're following up. So one of our stories this week is on how the schools are preparing. And most were anticipating some additional guidance before the rule took effect, but they were getting students and families ready and stressing that masking would be an option, and that they did not expect students to harass, tease other students who may choose to continue wearing a mask. And one of the schools, Dansville, even acknowledged, there are lots of reasons why parents and children may choose to continue wearing a mask. And, you might not know those reasons.
Well, I'm going to give you guys a chance to ask each other one question, but before I do that, I need to answer another question here. Somebody wanted me to put up again the how they could sign up to attend this meeting. Remember, this meeting is going to be on March 9th. That's a Wednesday night at 7:30. It's free and open to the public, and anybody who can attend, who wants to, can attend. Just go to, well, you can go to there and sign up for this show, but if you go to here, then you can sign up for the event. Just go to greaterwesternnewyork.org. A form will come up. Just put in your name and email address, and you will be emailed a special invitation to see this event. It's going to be via the Zoom platform, so most people are used to that by now. They'll be able to get into it, and you'll be able to participate both in terms of listening as well as in terms of participating. So again, that's next Wednesday night. There's the sign-up form that you'll get on there. So let's, this is very rare that I have somebody, people who are guests who are actually also in journalism, and so it makes my job easier. I don't have to ask all the questions. So I'm going to ask, we have about 3 minutes left. Shelley, I'll give you the first go at it. You ask Ben a question, as a reporter might ask on what Ben was covering. And then, Ben, I'll have you turn the tables and ask Shelley a question.
Uh-huh.
So, Ben, I haven't read your articles, but I'm just wondering how much you incorporate public commentary into these pieces, or are you basically relying on the school officials?
In this particular piece, because of the timing and when it was happening in relation to deadlines, it's largely the school officials. For the daily, where we have more opportunities and more deadlines, one of the things we did was we reported the story online on Sunday of the mask mandate going to change. Our next print edition was Tuesday. So by then, the news is old. So for Tuesday, we focused on talking to parents and emphasizing parents. And we had had some parents who have been very outspoken and have led protests and rallies down on Main Street. So they were some of the people that we reached out to for the story for the daily paper.
Very good. That's a great way to combine both sources in terms of reporting. So, Ben, what would you ask Shelley?
Well, it sounds like you've got a situation that's pretty unique, where communities are discussing leaving a county, and how do you explain that to readers and get them to understand what is happening, the ramifications, where even what the chance of something like this happening is?
Thus far, I've just been reporting it in real time. They are looking for somebody to conduct a study for them to see what some of the ramifications would be when it comes to taxes and roads and what would happen to the local library and schools and water. They have not conducted that study yet. So there's so much information we don't know. All that we do know is that they're unhappy with the current county and they would like to explore the option of leaving. It's interesting to note, though, that if Marilla does leave and they enter Wyoming County, they would actually be a community with the largest population then in Wyoming County. It would even exceed the county seat.
Wow.
Things could really change the dynamic of some of these counties and communities.
Yes.
Well, just in terms of what I know in the research that I've done on it, it would require both counties to accept the new lines. I don't know if it requires state action or not. I know in the past when county lines have changed, the state has been involved, but I don't know what precipitated those boundary changes. Sometimes those changes actually, by the way, came through court action, little itsy bitsy things. I think between Monroe and Livingston County, this is maybe 100 years ago, Ben, so we weren't around back then to report on it.
Well, if you look at the maps, Genesee County used to be huge.
Oh yeah, well, when you get right down to it, the entire Western New York region was just Ontario County, and then they started.
And Livingston came out of Ontario.
Yep. And Livingston, by the way, had its 200th anniversary last year.
Yes.
Erie County had its 200th anniversary last year. Totally coincidental. They were formed for different reasons. But the whole county history was the subject of another show that you guys, if you're watching, you could actually look it up and see when we talked about it. It was about a year ago, if I remember. Well, any final or closing thoughts in terms of, and we'll start with Shelley on this, the idea that maybe what you're seeing from a reporting standpoint is got legs, that might be somewhat of a leading edge indicator of what other towns and other counties might be interested in doing?
I think at this point it's still really too early to say because so much would have to be done. But at the end of the day, it's really about feeling frustrated just with the state of affairs, and it all comes down to this pandemic, at least as far as these communities go.
Right, and I think Livingston County is maybe more in unison in terms of, and here I'll ask you to expand, Ben. How does Livingston County as a whole kind of react to what's going on? What do you see in relation to, say, this home rule resolution sort of thing? What do you see going on with Livingston County?
Well, I know home rule legislation is something that Livingston County has, that the Livingston County government, it's been one of their legislative priorities for, I think, as long as I've been a part of covering Livingston County, and that goes back to 2013. It potentially could go back even before that. And they've been very vocal and try to be proactive in getting things changed and working collaboratively with other counties in the state to get things changed. The complicated, tax things. Right now, one of the things they want to see changes in sales tax so that, it's all being returned to the counties, not some being held back. And on the county level, it is something that is very much in the forefront of what they want to change.
All right. Well, thank you, Ben. Thank you, Shelley. We have reached that time of the show where I have to say, if you want to be a member of the live audience, go to stateof.greaterwestnewyork.com and sign up. It's free. Every Thursday morning, you'll get an email link to the show and who the guest is going to be, and you can decide if you'd like to be on the show and perhaps ask them questions like we had today. Some people ask questions. So again, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. We're here live every Thursday at noon. We're archived on our site, stateof.greaterwestnewyork.com, and then we're rebroadcast on our Facebook page and our YouTube channel every Sunday at 1:30. So for this week, bye-bye for now.